The real job is making sure you have the right people. But the crappy part is when there's not a good salesperson, you need to fire that person. And I say most businesses don't get there because the owner doesn't want to do the dirty work.
Alan Pentz is the founder and former CEO of Corner Alliance, a firm dedicated to enhancing digital infrastructure. With over 2 decades of consulting experience across government and corporate sectors, Alan has an amazing background in developing strategies that drive significant organizational change.
Are you selling at a gross margin that works? I see too many companies that have a 30% gross margin. Man, you're just huffing fumes. I heard someone say at 30, you basically almost don't have a business. At 40, you can either invest or take profits, but you have to make a choice. And then at 50, you can do both. Do you even have a business that you should be putting more money at this point?
How you set your company up to run without you? What are those critical roles?
First is understanding that you have to.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode of 5 to 50. I'm thrilled to introduce Alan Pentz. Alan is the founder and former CEO of Corner Alliance, a firm dedicated to enhancing digital infrastructure for federal programs in areas like broadband, cybersecurity, and public safety. With over 2 decades of consulting experience across government and corporate sectors, Alan has an amazing background in developing strategies that drive significant organizational change. He's also a committed educator through his work with the Small Business Mentor newsletter and holds roles on several boards fostering entrepreneurship and business acumen. Today, we'll dive into Alan's journey, discussing the strategies and insights he's gained from a successful career. Alan, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Awesome. So the place where I like to start often with our guests is where their entrepreneur journey began. So take us to the beginning of your journey. What caused you to go out on your own?
Yeah, so I always say that I started my own company because I didn't like the cell phone I had. I worked on Capitol Health for a while, and then I ended up getting into federal consulting after getting an MBA. And so I was working for this company and ended up getting bought. And so I left and went to a new company, and they gave me, this is how old I am, right? They gave me this horrible Sprint Nextel BlackBerry. And it was like kind of dusty and old. It was like a hand-me-down. And that was when the BlackBerry Curve was out. And I was like, man, I want a Curve. So I think the iPhone came out right at that time. So I was like, I'm just going to go start my own company. So that's sort of my tongue-in-cheek thing. And to this day, I never put a case on my iPhone because that's like, or my phone. Because I'm like, hey, that's why I started this company. If I break it, I'll buy a new one. That goes into the expenses. So the other thing I say is like, no one needed another government consulting firm when I started. There were plenty already. So it wasn't like I had some amazing idea or spotted this big hole in the market. After a while, I was managing work and clients, and I was sort of like, people above me don't seem that much smarter than me. And like, maybe I could just do this myself. And I was young and stupid enough to go do it. So I just kind of, and I think like naturally, I probably always had a little bit of an authority problem. And so it kind of lent itself, like definitely making money was part of it, but like really there was like a need for independence for me. And so I was willing to take some pain. Probably didn't maybe make as much for the first few years as I would have if I'd stayed in like an executive track. But that independence was worth it to me over time.
Yeah, I see it so frequently. The people that are always looking at their boss and saying, second guessing the decisions they're making, or looking at the direction the business is going and saying, I could do this better. Probably better off as entrepreneurs.
That's right. Not that I like now looking back on it, I understand why they're making some of the decisions they did. And I wasn't maybe so informed as I thought I was, but yeah, no, I definitely was that person, questioning everything.
Same here. So what was the thesis behind Corner Alliance?
Yeah, so we've been doing a lot of work like with various companies as the government was getting involved in trying to get public safety communications actually. So like when they use those big radios and stuff, like they weren't interoperable. And so after 9/11 and then post big hurricanes, Katrina and Rita, like all those systems kind of failed. So the government got into like, hey, how do we get these systems to be more coordinated? How do they work together? That kind of became broadband writ large. So it went past public safety and we kind of followed along with that. And so really like our niche in the market was like we had built a lot of ties into that community and in the client set. So like as a company, as a part of a company, it was a good small company, and then it gets bought. Now you're just one big Beltway bandit company with 3 or 4 initials or whatever. And it kind of lost the flavor of the client dedication and like commitment to the public safety community. And we had built like really tight relationships with a lot of the associations around that. And I felt like going out on our own, we could really serve that client set in a more focused way rather than just being like a project number on a spreadsheet for, some 4-letter company in the Beltway. It wasn't like any kind of crazy thesis. It was just like, hey, we could do this like 25% better than our company is, right? Basically.
We do it better, take more home personally, have more independence, and check.
Well, that's cheaper for the client too. Because what I say is like, particularly in professional services, when you break out from a big company, like they're charging you out at a much higher rate. So like you're effectively subsidizing the client. They would never tap your talent, especially if you're an experienced professional. They would never be able to tap your talent for that rate or whatever it is that cost. The way, if you're at a big company. So I do think that's sort of how most people get started, is kind of like subsidizing the business because they're cutting out, the overhead of and the profit of the big company.
Yeah, absolutely. And then being able to take a lower rate and reinvesting that into the company for growth.
Exactly.
Did you have initial success, or was it a slow grind?
Yeah. So like a lot of initial success and then a slow grind. So like now, as I was talking before, I'm doing this thing that I've stepped down from my company called Owner Institute. And it's really based on that journey that I took. And it's really focused on like sort of bootstrapped Main Street regular businesses, not something venture funded, right? Because they can skip some of these steps because they can hire more expensive, higher quality people, right? But when you start out, like I started with a partner, we were able to kind of bill our time. And what I say in that, in Owner, so we talk about that phase, like kind of 0 to 2 million. That's sort of like you got a job, but you happen to pay yourself. So you're kind of doing everything, particularly in the beginning, and you're the product, you're delivering it, you're billing it, you're collecting it, you're doing everything. So like we were able to kind of grow to say like 700K or something. This is '07, so I don't have the figures anymore. I just can't remember exactly. But we kind of got, we got a lot going right away because it was us billing our time with maybe like one or two other people. And so we kind of got there and then got stuck because we didn't realize we were, like I said, I was 95% billable. Like I didn't even know how to get into our bank account. We had somebody run in the back office who had no idea what she was doing. I mean, we put her in a bad spot, right? So we kind of grinded around there, and then we were able to kind of get past that phase by selling more, basically, and starting to get other people into the delivery. So, and that's often what I recommend. Like if you're below 2 million, say, the owner really just needs to focus on selling.
I agree. It's so easy to work in the business and be the product that you're selling. But so much of what we advise our clients to do is focus on selling, get other people that are producing, be in that customer service role. So that way you can scale the business.
It's like peeling an orange in some ways. Like each slice is like, all right, get rid of to get to the gold right underneath. So it's like you peel off a slice that's like, get rid of admin, payroll, blah, blah, blah. Then peel off a slice of like the other functions of the business that are back office. Then peel off the slice of like as much client delivery as you possibly can. But like the one thing you're not going to probably be able to hire at that level is a really good salesperson. And like, I always said like there are people that can come in and construct a sales system and do it from scratch, but they all make $1.5 million a year and work at Oracle, right? They're not working for you at 2 million. So you're going to be that person so you got to peel those other layers off and keep that, like the juice in the middle is you selling. And that's sort of, I think, that's how we got past 2 million. And I call that then, now you have a business once you got past that, because it's not just you serving and doing everything. But it was really in that we kind of got there, I would say, in like, I don't know, 2-3 years, we got up to about 3 to 4 million. And that's where we got stuck again. Because I feel like, yes, now we sold all this stuff, but now we created all this new chaos in the business. And we weren't managing customers effectively. And we weren't, and I would say, from the financial side, that's when we realized, hey, we do not understand. I had an MBA and I didn't know how to run a business financially.
Yeah, tell us about what it looks like at that point. So many clients work with venture-backed startups that have raised money and they're able to pay from these systems from day one because their investors want them to be able to scale without thinking about that in the future. We also work with bootstrap companies that every dollar that goes into non-revenue generating things, accounting, back office things, doesn't drive revenue directly, but it builds that foundation that you can scale. So we see so many clients or entrepreneurs at that level that don't invest in their back office. And then when it comes time to do a transaction or they have a big opportunity up front, they're just not ready for it. So where were you guys at that level?
We were very at the low end of that.
Did you have an accountant?
Yeah, I mean, we had accountants. We had someone trying to do bookkeeping. I think at some point, we did bring in bookkeepers eventually who like overcomplicated our chart of accounts. And it was like, for me, not being venture backed, it was like money comes in, you pay people, and money goes out. And I said at that phase, cash in our business was like a waiter in a New York restaurant. Like you knew they were there, but you couldn't get your hands on them. And so like, I remember we went into a meeting, this is probably a few years into that, being stuck around $3 to $4 million in revenue. We went into a meeting with our accountants at the end of the year and they were like, hey, congratulations. I think we did 4 million top line and change. And I think we made about 600K in profit, but we didn't have any systems. We weren't projecting. We weren't doing any of that stuff. So I was like, great, where's my 600,000? Like, I don't have $600,000. And then we finally had hired this woman from our old company, one of the bigger companies, and she actually did projections. So we went in and talked to her right after, 2 weeks after this meeting, riding high. And she's like, and you're going to start losing money in January, because we had a client that cut back and I think we knew what was happening, but we were trying to avoid the reality. We had too many staff. We didn't adjust the staffing. We didn't lay anybody off. We didn't reduce hours, and we started losing money. And we put a bunch of money on our line of credit, like a couple of idiots. And that really led me to my journey to like figure out, because I wasn't sleeping well. I'm going into debt. I have 2 young kids, or I guess it was maybe 3 at that point. My wife wasn't working. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing? And like, I got to go figure this out. So I watched a lot of YouTube videos, read some books. We ended up going and working with a guy named Greg Crabtree for a while on a system. And that was one of the first things that we really got down, was like, hey, look, you're paying these people this much, you're making that much, you've got a math problem. So you've got to, one of those two things has got to change, right? And it was just like bringing attention to it. And then I started kind of systematically going through the business and trying to, all right, now it's like, what are we doing on sales and marketing? What is our people strategy? Going through the whole thing and trying to learn and read. And quite frankly, I joined EO, Entrepreneurial Organization. That was all really helpful. But I found it really frustrating because you got to go to 1,000 different places and you pick up a nugget here, a nugget there, but there's no like way of putting it together. But really at that stage, it was about getting a more qualified management person in who could actually do like the projections, run the finances, make all that stuff run without us. So we could start working on sales and delivery more. And so that, I call that, sort of like 3 to 5 million, you got your first big hire. And that's what got us over that.
Yeah, makes sense. I want to kind of stay on the meeting with the accountants a little bit, because I think that's really insightful, and tying it back to the value of projections and budgeting. Because even if you had $600,000 in the bank, without a budget or without a projection, there's no way to determine whether that's a good number or a bad number, right? It's just a number on the page that's independent of anything else, any comparison. And so building those budgets is such an important exercise because it gets people rowing in the same direction. We work with our clients on building budgets typically at the start of the year, then midway through the year, if not more frequently, just to align strategy and set expectations. So that way, once you get the numbers at the end of the month or end of the quarter, you're comparing to what you thought and did we do well? Did we not do well? What went right? What went wrong? And so it sounds like the accountants were looking at a number in the abstract that they just thought was big, but in reality had no bearing on anything. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's sort of always been a frustration, right? Is like a lot of accountants are there to pay your taxes and they're not really helping you run your business. And, that's what they were doing. They were showing us like the tax bill kind of thing. And, we weren't too stupid to realize that, like you said, like 600 in cash with 800,000 in accounts payable and zero in accounts receivable is not a good position to be in, right? Or with a bunch of liabilities coming up that you're not getting rid of and taking care of. So 100%. I mean, I think the core foundation for every company has to be, you've got to get the numbers down. Because I mean, the other thing too is like just getting sensible about like, are you selling at a gross margin that works? I see too many companies that have a 30% gross margin and you're like, man, you're just huffing fumes here. You got to push that thing up above 40 before you're really going to be able to have a business. I heard someone say at 30, you basically almost don't have a business. At 40, you can either invest or take profits, but you have to make a choice. And then at 50, you can do both. That was sort of, and I think there are exceptions to that and blah, blah, blah. There are ways around it. But I always thought that. But it's like, do you even have like a business that you should be putting more money into at this point? Like if you put in $1 and you only get back like a couple of cents, like that's not really worth it. You might as well go get a job.
Absolutely. So you had a big hire, big management hire that's supposed to be in bring systems and processes in. What were the first things that they did to help you?
Yeah. So it's really that what you're talking about. Like it was budgeting, projections, that kind of stuff was really the core. I think then it got into, client delivery, which is what we could do, right? Because like what happens too is once you get over about 4 million, you might not be supervising all the projects or, I'm in a professional services business. So, but you're not intimately connected to every client all the time. Whereas before that, I don't know how much you really have to have systems for delivery because you kind of do it. You know how to do it. And then the only other people involved work for you and they're doing what you tell them. So like when companies are smaller, I say, don't even worry about all these processes, right? Because you're just kind of doing your thing. Go sell more. Then you're going to build processes once you sell. I mean, of course, if you have infinite hours of the day, go ahead and, do your process. But it's really at that point where you start losing touch with everything. You can't manage it all. So the second thing we did is starting to like regularize the process we use for delivering clients and putting in like, the monthly meeting with the client and this kind of thing and that. And then like not just doing it ourselves, but documenting the process so other people would do it. So that was really the second. The third was people. So figuring out a better hiring strategy. I've been through 8 iterations of that. So I wouldn't say the one we land. And that's another point is like, as you go through these phases from like 1 to, 0 to 2, 2 to 5, 5 up, like the system that you used before might have been adequate, but now it's got to change, right? So it's like below 5, I interviewed every single person. When we got closer to 10, I just can't do that anymore. So you have to have a better system by the time you get to 10. But you don't necessarily need it when you're 3. That's like overkill, right? Because you're still involved. So that's part of like what I think about with Owner Institute too. It's like, you got to build the system for the right. If you overbuild and overspend, you're going to sink yourself before you get there. So it's about getting it to the right spot.
You got to build a business that requires a foundation. The foundation on its own won't build the business. So you can have best accounting system and a best invoicing system and metrics tracking system in the world. But if you can't sell,
or the other thing is like, you could get this awesome accounting system that automates your invoicing and you send out 3 invoices. big whoop, right? I mean, like you could just do that by hand and wait for that thing until you had 50 invoices, right? I mean, don't overbuild for where you are because you're just wasting money.
Hey everyone, I want to take a moment to talk about how we at ProSeer are simplifying accounting and finance for entrepreneurs. Through our outsourced accounting, fractional CFO services, proactive tax planning, and accounting software implementations, we cut out unnecessary complexity for business owners and entrepreneurs. Our approach provides real-time insights, practical tax strategies, and a clear roadmap to help our clients grow their businesses. If you'd like to learn more, feel free to book a free consultation with me by visiting proseer.co. That's PROSEER.co. Now, back to the show. Exactly. Yeah. So you want to make sure that the systems you have support the current season of the business and maybe the next season as well. Will get you to the next season. And then you should constantly reassess. It should be an everyday thing, but maybe at the end of every year, make sure that the systems you have are able to get you through the next year and beyond. So whether that's your accounting system, we use QuickBooks Online, Sage Intacct, whether that's your billing system, whether that's your HR system, whatever it is that supports your go-to-market and supports your people, it should be constantly reassessed, right?
Yeah, we're doing that all the time. We're changing systems. And we've grown quickly, so, then it puts pressure on the systems.
How did your role change as founder as you brought in people to help support sales, to support finance function internally? How did you adapt into where you focused every day?
Yeah, that's sort of what I talk about too, is like 0 to 2, you're everything, right? You're wearing all the hats. After that, I was able to make a big hire where someone could kind of operate independently of me and my partner at the time. And then at that point, my role got a little more focused and I could just focus on what I'm good at, just like sales and a little bit of client delivery, right? So I was better off than not having to deal with like timesheets.
The business was better broadly, right?
Yeah. Payroll and all the stuff that entrepreneurs are terrible at, right? And it's funny, I'm starting this new thing, so I'm like having to do it again. And I'm like, oh, wait, I got to go hire someone to get rid of this immediately. I can't do this anymore. So really it was getting in that groove where I was, selling more, doing a little bit of client delivery. Then it got to, I think we had to build out more hires in other areas before we got to the core ones that I did. So replacing me in sales was the last step. But at first it was like, we got that back office, finance, admin. Then it was like people. And then it was like someone over client delivery.
When you say people, you're saying like HR typically.
Yeah, HR, but like recruiting and career development type stuff. Because in our business, just, we have a lot of T&M kind of engagement. So it's all about recruiting, right?
T&M, time and materials, right?
Time and materials, yeah. So, every time we sell something, we got to go recruit. So that's like an intimate part of the sales cycle. So that came before actually delivery. And then, so then at that point, my role really got much less like going to client sites and being with the clients all the time. I still tried to keep that through periodic check-ins, but it was more to my liking just being in the sales side. And then, as that grew, I felt like at a certain point, I got that first layer of leaders in. Through that process, I ended up buying my partner out, which is a whole nother story. But I was still, kind of key to the sales process. And I think I became a hindrance to the sales process. So I think founder-led sales, 100% at the beginning, you've got to do it, right? That you're the only person who can do it. But at a certain point, what you're selling, when we were up between 5 and 10, closer to 10 million, we sat there for a while because I wasn't good at running a larger company's sales department. I was really good at I was a consultant salesperson in my own company, and there was like a separate BD function that did a bunch of stuff that I didn't really get involved in. And so they were the ones tracking like the master services agreements, or as we call them, contract vehicles. And I didn't really do any of that. So I didn't really know how to do it. And so like I would actually promote people to be the salesperson, giving them a role I didn't know myself what they were supposed to do, and giving it to someone less experienced than me. So I called that like being Darth Vader's admiral. Like it's a pretty good job while you got it, but you know you're going to get killed within like a year. So I find the resales people. It was just like the worst job. And then I realized, oh, it's me. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And we had to go out and hire someone more experienced, right? And so that was like the next phase is like you get sticker shock on the salaries because you're so used to being scrappy and getting by with these kind of like bubble gum and doing it kind of yourself and duct tape and bubble gum. But if you want to get past, you want to be 8, 10, $15 million company, you got to go. At this point now, you're selling a defined thing. Lots of people have bought it. You should be able to get somebody now and afford them that can sell it. And you got to start getting people who are better at things than you. I would still say up to that point, I would probably be better at everything in the company than the person I hired. Maybe I wouldn't be as detail oriented. So that maybe finance, that wasn't true, but almost everything else I was. At that point, then I had to hire someone who was better than me.
And at that point for that, is the compensation structure for them incentive based? Are they participants in the equity side? How do you attract team members of that caliber to the business?
Yeah. So, I mean, sales is its own beast and it's different. Our industry tends to be higher base, lower commission, but it'll vary on the industry. But yeah, it's just like a lot more money. So not equity. I don't believe, look, equity is for venture capital funded firms and some private equity in one category. And the reason they're in a category is because they have a defined exit path with a level that they need to get to. And then everybody's on the same page. And when they get there in that time period, they get cashed out. And look, sometimes they don't get there in that time period. And then people are doing all these secondaries and blah, 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 right? But that works in that environment. But when you have like a regular, closely held small business, I mean, I don't know, I might not sell my company for 20 years. What am I giving you equity for? Like, you're going to be like living in the Bahamas, like married to your third wife by the time I sell this company, right? So I do think there, as you go and as it gets bigger, I would not do that when it's like, hey, I'm making a sales hire. No, hey, look, now that I've gotten to the point I am, we did close to 35 million last year. I've hired, now we've redone the entire leadership team. And I put in a more professional CEO and stuff like that. Now there's an equity package associated with that. But I think that's appropriate. And then we have a timeline to grow the company to X. And then like there are benefits that come from getting us to X, right? But I would never have done that when I was like 8, 10 million. And like, I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea when I was leaving. And so I just think like the equity thing came out of this Silicon Valley world and then to some extent PE. And it doesn't apply as much here.
So, it's interesting. We're seeing a lot more. It's becoming a lot more common on the accounting side. For us specifically, we have an employee equity plan to allow our employees to participate in the growth that they're creating. It's a little bit of a new phase as private equity enters accounting, the accounting space more and more, and they're kind of flipping the way that things are done on their head. It's becoming more common, and it's not as hard to set up as it used to be. So it's something that every business is different. Just depends on, everyone's got to incentivize their employees their own way. And so some people want that equity. They want that skin in the game.
And there's some good things about that. And then I think there's some downsides about that. So like I look at ESOPs, and not to say I wouldn't do an ESOP myself someday. So I might live to regret it. But it does then create this thing where like if it's so long that you've operated with this plan, you got all these people with all the value who are like kind of dead weight at the company and they're sucking up all the value and the new people don't get it. So like, again, it's just like this thing where like, I think the equity thing, not to say that you shouldn't do it, but just realize like this, and some businesses are partnership paths, right? So that's different. I'm not doing that model. So if you're on a partnership path in an accounting firm, sure, makes sense because you're going to be getting up there. And then the whole point of it is distributions from the partnership, right? But if you're a high growth business and you're trying to get to something and you don't have like a defined outcome and you're not looking at just like eat what you kill, taking home at the end of the year, I'm not sure how valuable the equity is. So are you creating an expectation you're going to distribute all this money every year?
You have to clearly lay out the plan. You have to make sure that it's clearly communicated. So I agree. Let's go back to finance in your business and how you're working with clients on that. What were the metrics you're tracking as you're scaling throughout? Are there metrics that were consistent from the 5 to 10 million to the 10 to 20 million dollars?
Yeah, I mean, we're very into measuring labor efficiency. So we look at both direct and management and admin. So direct is how many dollars of revenue. Sometimes in our business, because we have a lot of teaming and subcontractors, we'll look at like kind of what we call like real revenue, which is like just subs removed, but other direct costs included. But we'll look at like how many dollars of revenue do I get for every dollar I pay in direct salary? And then we'll take out the direct salary and say, this is mostly crabtree, how many dollars of, whatever you want to call that, gross margin. It's not really gross margin, call it contribution margin sometimes. But, so it's just like revenue minus direct labor, divide that by total management and admin labor. So it's like how many dollars of contribution margin am I getting for every dollar of management and admin labor I pay? And so what that's really helped us with is, and we like to do it by person, by project, by division, and for the company. And so you can really see like, what am I getting for everything I'm paying for? And you can see like, oh, this person, yeah, they're great, but we're not making any money off of them, right? Or this project, or we can group projects and say, oh, these types of projects tend to be better for us, right? I remember Greg telling some story about like a lawn company and they were doing commercial mowing and like residential fertilization. And they put the analysis up and it was like they were getting $4 of revenue for every dollar of labor on the commercial fertilization side and like $1.50 on the mowing side. And even like the guy who made $8 an hour mowing is like, I don't think we should be doing mowing anymore. And I was like, that's it. That's what you're going to try to get out of all this. So we use that a lot. We use, just gross margin. And then for us, like run rate is really important, revenue run rate, because our work comes in larger chunks. Like all of a sudden, so we don't tend to look at yearly totals because like it'll change all of a sudden at the end of the year. Again, the government awards a lot of work in September, right? Their fourth quarter. So we use monthly run rate to track where we want to be. So our goal is by December of 2025, we want to be at X run rate in revenue. And once we win something, it tends to be like a year. It's like the same amount every month, usually. It's recurring for at least a year and up to 3 to 5 years. So you can kind of judge that way more. So it's just a different metric because of that.
Yeah. MRR is monthly recurring revenue.
Yeah, it's basically the same thing. Yeah, we kind of came up with that before SaaS was really big. So I guess we use our run rate terminology, right? Yeah, it was big. Yeah, right.
Let's talk about how you assess risk and how your assessment of risk has changed over your career. Obviously, when you're early on, you don't have a lot to lose. You're able to take bigger swings. And that theoretically should change over the life of a business. But how do you assess risk?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're exactly right. I remember when I was thinking about starting my business, my buddy said, you're never going to get any cheaper. So I was like, yeah, I always remember that. And he was right. Because like really what was a downside? I worked in that industry. I could have worked for a little while if the clients had kind of gone away. Like I just would have gotten another job in that industry, right? I mean, it's not that terrible. So to be honest, I don't think the risk was super high. Plus there's not a lot of startup costs and professional services. You got to fund yourself for 45 days or 60 days or whatever. So I feel like I went out with a pretty healthy risk assessment, knowing that it wasn't that risky. So like, I think if it had been a lot riskier, like if I'd had to put hundreds of thousands of dollars down, no way I would have done it. Because I like think I'm a risk taker, but I'm really not. I'm pretty cautious. And I've been like that with a lot of things, like with equity, thinking about selling or partners, or I get really risk averse on that because yeah, there's upsides to it, but like you can just blow yourself up with that stuff. So yeah, I would say I've always been cautious. I would say the dollar amount that I care about now is higher, right? So that's a privilege of having been successful. So 10K is not going to send me spiraling the way I would have, 20 years, 18 years ago. And I do think I'm getting older. So like, I think about, it's not like I want to go retire and play golf all the time, but I definitely do think about like, oh, everybody wants to have like an IPO or $1 billion company, or they want to get to 500 million. And I'm more like, nah, I don't really care about that. I want to live a really good life, make good money. I've set up my company to run without me. I am stupidly setting up another company. I don't know why, but I tend to run it, as a way, it's part of my, like, what I've learned and what I want to share. So it's more like, it's also a passion project too, right? To help owners go through to get to where I got to in faster way than I did, instead of chewing glass for year after year. So I do think my risk, I guess it's like the upside just seems like not as great to take huge risks anymore.
Got it. That makes sense. Let's talk about how you set your company up to run without you. What are those critical roles that help support that?
Yeah. So I say it's like, if you got a $2 million company, you're not going to hire a GM and walk off and play golf. I'm sorry, that's not happening. So like, yeah, different levels, you can afford different levels of independence. But within that, at 2 million, you can either be drowning or having a good life, right? So like, you're still going to be crucial to the business, but you don't have to be drowning. So I think first is like understanding that you have to go through every function of the business that you don't directly do naturally when you're small, and try to figure out how to offload and systematize as much as you can at the level you are.
Do you have someone who's the head of sales now?
I do. Yeah. So for me, by the time I got to say 10 to 15 million, then it was like, all right, now I need to have, I'm doing it. Once you get to that point, all you're doing is making sure the team is set. And so you need to have someone, I think by 10, going past 10 million, you need to have a leader in every functional role. So people, delivery, whatever you want to call it, operations delivery, product, right? You got a CEO, right? Then you got product, then you got, or delivery, then you got people, and then you got at minimum finance and admin. And then, some businesses, tech and sales. And I say you need a separate salesperson. So almost every business is like marketing, sales, to delivery operations, to finance and admin and people. So you got to have someone at least on each one of those. And I think by the time you're, 10 to 15 million, there should be a separate person on each one of those. Maybe marketing and sales are together still. And then what you're doing at that point is you're getting those people to drive down to build a good team out under them and the systems to support those people, right? And so once you kind of get to that, now all you're doing, and this is really the worst thing about it, is you're still providing vision and you're helping manage that team. But the real job is making sure you have the right people at the table. And unfortunately, as you grow, you will not have the right people at the table all the time. And so your job is easier or simpler in the sense of, I don't need to go run sales. I need to make sure there's a good salesperson. But the crappy part is when there's not a good salesperson, you need to fire that person and hire another one. And that is not easy. And I say most businesses don't get there because the owner doesn't want to do the dirty work that it requires. And almost every business, once they get past 5 to 8, there's some person that's a blocker that they need to get rid of. And it's usually a loyal employee who grew up with you, did all these different things you love, but just can't be, they were great at doing the books and selling, but now you need a real salesperson. Right. So it's a really hard thing for most owners, and they don't get there.
It's a constant communication that we have with our clients, reviewing their books, looking at their team, and they get to the conclusion that what got me here won't get me there. And it's tough. And sometimes you can move those people to different departments where they can thrive.
I've never seen that work, but okay, I'll take your word for it. But
It depends. Depends on the opportunity, the business, and the person. But yeah, sometimes you do have to make those difficult decisions.
yeah, and I say, one of the things I've built out is like some of the diagnostics you look at, and it's like you can almost always go in and talk to someone 3 or 4 times, and you'll be like, there's always a problem right here. And yeah, you tell me a bunch of reasons why, but that's your problem. That person's the problem, right? So that's how you see it. It's just like, what's always nagging at you? What's always the problem? What's the squeaky wheel all the time? And then, you've got to address it. And sure, I do think you need to give people feedback and you need to work with them, but you don't have 2 to 3 years to turn that person into a CFO or a salesperson or whatever. Most likely you don't even know how to do that. So you're not going to be very successful. And, your business just can't sit there for 3 years while they develop. And if you want to do that, that's up to you. It's your choice, but you're paying that price and you're holding back everybody else too.
So tell us what you're doing with your next business that you're starting.
Yeah. So I'm doing Owner Institute, ownerinstitute.com. Yeah. I'm starting it up to kind of build out this framework and talk about, the level of owner independence based on the growth of the company and the size of the company and where you can get to in different levels of that. So like you can get yourself into a really good life running a $3 to $5 million company where you're still essential to the business, but you're not working every weekend, you take vacations and you make good money. Or, at that point you can say, hey, look, I really do want to go for 10, 15, 20. And now I'm willing to invest more money and time because, by the way, my owner independence is going to go down when I launch all this stuff, right? And just kind of helping people think through that and see where they are. So we're going to I'm doing a little bit of coaching around it, but I'm trying to build it out more as like a methodology that people hopefully can self-use too and kind of playing with it. Because it's sort of like, I feel like it's what I figured out after beating my head against the wall for 18 years. And it's sort of like, that's the product of it. So if anybody's interested in it, reach out. I'm on LinkedIn and X and Alan at ownerinstitute.com.
What's your X handle?
It is owner, INSTI. They're only 15 characters. So it's like, keep spelling Owner Institute until you hit 15. I just launched that one. So,
well, good luck with it. And we'll sure we fall in. Alan, thanks a lot for the time today. Anyone listening, reach out to Alan with any questions. It's been great learning from you and hope to stay in touch. Thanks a lot, Alan.
That was awesome, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to 5 to 50. If you found today's episode helpful, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with other business owners looking to grow. Do you have a question or a topic you'd like us to cover? Connect with us on LinkedIn or reach out to us at ProSeer, where we're empowering entrepreneurs with real-time, actionable insights and financial infrastructure through smarter accounting, tax, and financial strategies. Let's keep this conversation going. Together, we'll help our businesses thrive. Talk to you soon.